In the meantime.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Can we please stand to say the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Thank you everyone for coming this morning. We do not have any written communication or anyone wishing to speak. So I'd like to ask, do we have any committee reports? No. Okay, thank you very much. We will move on to Superintendent Pinella. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for making time to be here at this special meeting for our report from our external auditors, Drescher and Merlecki, on our annual audit. And thank you for your patience during this audit process and the extended time frame that it took, given the circumstances we've been facing. And welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's see if this is going. It will work. Excellent. All right. Well, first, I think getting in front of this group, obviously, we want to just say we feel for you. We're pretty sad to hear the news of the passing of Treasurer Williams. She's been great to work with, and it hit for us too. It was a strange year, and we're happy to do whatever it took to make this year, get to the finish line. Of course, we're going to do it with you guys. But that said, we are here trying to get this out before October 15th deadline or 16th deadline. So, special meeting called today because now we're in the position where we have some numbers to report to the board. So we'll go through our typical short slideshow that just helps recap the audit process itself quickly, and also do a little high-level overview of the financial statement results to talk dollars and fund balances. So, each year, what you come to expect, of course, is the basic financial statements. That's going to include all the funds of the district, your general funds, school lunch, capital projects, and the balances as of June 30th, 2023, along with the revenue and the expenditure activity for the 12 months there ended. We perform our audit over those financial statements, and we're hired to provide our professional opinion and say whether or not we believe those are fairly stated. Can they be relied upon? So that's our job. Within the financial statements, in addition to those financial results, we also help the district comply with your federal requirements for what's called a single audit. The district receives and spends over a $750,000 minimum threshold of federal aid, and because of that, you're subject to what's called a single audit. We basically take the compliance requirements straight from the federal government and perform that compliance audit on the way that the district received and then handled and spent the federal money that came in and out the door. So we also complete that audit, and that's included at the back of the basic financial statement. In addition to that, there are a couple letters, a management letter and an auditor communications letter. A management letter, this is typical each year that we issue a letter really to formalize any recommendations or best practices that we wanted to share with the district. If there are areas that they're not reportable findings, nothing to get too concerned over, but if we see areas for improvement or other items that we want to make you aware of for future years, we'll put that in a management letter and then share that with the district too. Auditor communications, there are each year some required communications from your auditors to the governing board, and more specifically, you do have an audit committee that we report to and met with a couple weeks ago, met and communicated those in more detail than we will tonight. But if you had any questions specifically, let us know. And finally, an extra classroom activity report, the various clubs and activities that run through the extra classroom program. They issue a separate, smaller financial statement that's on a simpler cash basis in and out instead of dealing with accruals and all the fun stuff that the district's financial statements undergo. The audit communications, that significant ones that were gone over with the audit committee are before you. I'll just highlight a couple for this morning. And the first is our responsibility under generally accepted auditing standards is It's not to compile the financial statements or take responsibility for them. They're the district's financial statements. You have a business office that maintains these records on your accounting software throughout the year. Our job, our responsibility is to audit those records and make sure that they're presenting fairly so that a reader of the financial statements, it could be just resident taxpayers, banks that you're working with, granting agencies, they want to see that those are in the right format and that they can be relied upon, and that's where we come in. So our responsibility is to perform an audit and gain assurance over the dollar amounts that are in your financial statements that they can be relied upon. So that's our job. The district's job is to maintain those records well throughout the year. Our opinion, we're prepared to issue what's called an unmodified opinion. That's a clean opinion, what you should strive for. The other item under our responsibility is, like I mentioned, the focus of our audit is to gain assurance over the dollar amounts in the financial statements. When you hear audit, sometimes you interchange that quickly with looking for fraud. And as your financial statement auditors, that's not what we're here to do. The scope of our audit, we're hired to audit those numbers. We're not here to search for fraud or to look for fraud. That would be, a separate engagement and probably another firm with forensic auditors. But just want to differentiate that. Drescher Malecki's here to do the financial statement audit. The last one to touch on with the full group today is the second from the bottom, independence. So if your readers and users of the financial statements are going to place reliance on those numbers, and we're the auditors that are putting our opinion on them, it's critical that we don't have any conflicts of interest with the district. We wouldn't want to be biased when we're going through our audit procedures of the district. It wouldn't be fair to the readers and users of the financial statements if we had any sort of impairment of independence with the district. So each year we're forced to review our relationships with everybody at the district, from the governing board to management, and make sure that we don't have anything that would put us in a tough position. So this year, again, we're in the right objective position to serve as your auditors. I think Carl's going to walk through some of the financial highlights and wrap up with observations.
Financial highlights, to put some numbers on this chart here, we like to show 5 years of data that compares revenues and expenditures. But at the end of the 2023 fiscal year, revenues, which is represented by your blue line in this case, was $70.3 million. Your expenditures were $70.8 million. So expenditures, your red line exceeding your revenues by about $500,000. As we'll see on next slides, a lot of that use of fund balance of $500,000 came from large transfers to the capital projects fund from the capital reserve of over $3 million. So without that particular transfer, revenues would have exceeded expenditures. But again, if we look at this chart here, it shows 5 years of data, and it shows a good mix between using fund balance and exceeding or gaining fund balance on an annual basis, which is what we like to see. There's no 5 years of using fund balance, or there's no 5 straight years of gaining fund balance in this case. So part of the differences from last year to this year, revenues went up $4.3 million. Unprecedented level in state aid across New York State districts this year. State aid, we'd like to get what we budgeted for every year. It was fairly consistent this year. State aid went up $3.2 million, which is a trend we've seen across the state. Interest earnings went up $500,000, and then just a continued increase in sales tax. That was, we were all fearful of back in 2020 when the pandemic was declared. Under expenditures went up $5.6 million. Again, 3.4 were transfers, of which the majority went to capital projects fund. Employee benefits went up $700,000, which is standard in accordance with your past years. And then just general increases in transportation and instructional costs. The pandemic being over, kids coming back to school, more programs being offered. So how does that use of $500,000 in fund balance allocate this year as far as total fund balance? So this chart here shows your 2022-2023 fiscal year fund balance of just over $10 million, which is broken out into unrestricted and restricted. The unrestricted is your blue portion. It groups your unassigned fund balance and your assigned fund balance for subsequent years and encumbrances. So that blue portion went up from $4.5 million to $5.5 million. So $1 million increase. That's broken out even further again with your unassigned being $3.7 million of that bottom portion, and your assignments being $1 million. Your reserves went down from $6.2 million to $4.8 million. Again, that's your capital project use of the reserve that was transferred to capital project fund to fund those and wrap up those projects. And here on the next slide, with the school district being subject to section 1318 of the real property tax law, requires school district to maintain 4% of unassigned fund balance as a percentage of subsequent years' expenditures, appropriations. With the pandemic in 2020, Amherst schools, just like a lot of other schools, ended up over the 4%. And it was a transparent way to communicate and to show that there was excess funding, our costs went down, schools were closed. And then there was an effort to reduce that to 4%, which happened in 2022. And now in 2023, with, again, unprecedented levels in state aid, you're back over the 4% at 4.9%. So, whereas we're issuing a non-modified opinion on the financial statements, it's a clean opinion on the uniform guidance. There's just going to be a small compliance finding that we have to report on the financial statements on exceeding 4%. It happened in 2020, it happened in 2021, and gives the district an opportunity to provide a response of what the excess is going to be used for in future years to get back down to 4%. And then observations, Carl mentioned a management letter. We currently have a management letter in draft form. We have included comments across a number of school districts and municipalities over the last year on succession planning and some of the staffing challenges that districts and municipalities have. So we're considering that as a management letter item. And then extra classroom last year, 2 years ago, I believe. I think there was 2 clubs, band and orchestra, that had paid for voucher tickets and resulted in them being in a deficit position because they're on the cash basis of accounting. And so with the cash being used to pay vouchers, we couldn't record that asset on the books. And so that's just to keep an eye on until the debt goes back to 0. We're just going to include it in there as a compliance with New York State guide. But as far as internal controls for clubs, it was again clean for the extra classroom activity program. So that's what we noticed. Capital assets, I know over the last couple of years, we've had some challenges with getting some reports from third party and reliable information. And I'm happy to say this year capital asset was very pleasant to work with. So it was a challenge, but we went to the finish line, and I think we're in a good place. So, any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again for your patience and extra time spent under, again, the extenuating circumstances. And, you know, I appreciate your flexibility and also getting us over the finish line in time to do the reporting we have to do.
Of course.
So, good job.
Thank you.
Okay, we will need a motion for new business item E1A.
I'll make a motion for new business items. E1A to approve is that what I'm doing? Approving the auditor's?
Yes, that's it.
Annual management report for the year ending 6/30/23, pending any material changes.
Thank you very much. I need a second.
Second.
Okay. Okay, is there any discussion? All those in favor of approving new business item E1A, please say aye. Aye. Motion passes 6-0. Okay, we will need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Arrington.
I will second.
Thank you, Mrs. Goldcock. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. Okay, thank you very much. Motion adjourned.